What is going on, everybody? What is going on? I have no idea what is going on here. I'm taking over Smores Indoors channel to host a show tonight. This is craziness. I've never done this before where I've actually hosted a show on someone else's channel. So this is all new to me. Corey said he was trying to revamp the channel and have these cool like special guest hosts throughout the summer and stuff. And pretty cool idea. And I definitely have a guest tonight as well to chat with. So let's see who is in the chat first, and then I will bring in my guest tonight. We got Dan Shine in here. What is going on? Tony Basement Blues. I just did a live stream on my channel over at Born2BeRad. If you guys haven't checked that out, I just got done going live. We talked about Olive Films, and now I'm here, a little double header action. The Ring, what is going on? Welcome to the show. Ben Grimm, what's up, man? Welcome back. And guys, I have a pretty cool guest tonight. Somebody who I've known for a while. I've known of for even longer. But I've never had him on my channel. I've never actually talked to him one-on-one before. I've been on other streams with him, but never one-on-one. And I want to kind of dive deep because, man, this guy's an OG in the horror scene. And I want to kind of get to know his story. So my guest tonight on S'mores Indoors is none other than Dan Shine.
What's up, Garrett? How's it going?
What's up, dude? How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I've known you since like 2009, I think.
Like, did you, it's funny because, and I could be wrong, but did we chat on like Facebook briefly, like way back in the day?
Yeah, my original profile, then I pulled up a new one, the one I have now. And I noticed, yeah, we were like, when they dropped that set, I think at Kmart that had the dark on it, the 1993 film with Nev Campbell. You couldn't find it, and I did, and I think I might have sent it to you. What? I don't remember. Yeah.
That is insane. I have no recollection of that. I'm trying to think like what that was. Was it like one of those multi-packs?
Yeah, it had a bunch of movies on it, and I think I still had messages from you when they dropped that set that had like 976 Evil 2 and like everybody was panicking and looking for it at the discount bins. So yeah,
it's actually funny, man, that you say that, because I do a show on my channel called Rad Memories, where basically I'll just take a topic and I'll talk about like memories with it. It could be a movie, it could be now, and I have a sheet of paper over here where I always jot down like upcoming shows. I have a Rad Memory show about those like packs, because it was so wild, and it was like one of those things that was just so random that you get a multi-pack of movies on DVD that never saw the light of day on DVD, and they just chucked in like these $5 Walmart bins, and it was like, yeah, guys, go find them. And it was, man, I remember being in Walmart's and my friend like in the bin because they were just buried.
Yeah,
and you either found them or you didn't. And there was like, I think 3 of them or something, maybe.
eBay scalpers were hitting that for a while. I know some people couldn't get a hold of it. So I think I bought something like 30 of those for people that couldn't find it and had to mail them out to a bunch of people.
Isn't that crazy, man, to think about that, though? Like, just goes to show how different times were back then. And it just goes to show how, like, anybody who's getting into the collecting game now, right? That there was still a lot of these wild things that were happening back then, when people now are like, oh, limited drops. Like, this is what we were doing. We were in stores, like literally ripping them apart, trying to find these things, where now it's all like online based. But it is just so funny to think about those times, because I think there was like, I have them still. It was either 3 or 4 of them. There was one with like bloody murder on it and all that stuff. And I think you got the sequels and whatnot. And then there was basically all these titles that you're seeing come out from Vestron are the ones that were kind of in those packs.
Yeah.
But did Lionsgate do those?
Lionsgate did that one that everybody was losing their mind with. And it kind of seems like they've been following the pattern of slowly putting those out on Blu-ray. Although 976 Evil 2 hasn't happened, but I know My Best Friend is a Vampire is coming next. So seems like they're doing that. They haven't hit them all yet, but
that is so funny though. Just talking about that now. I want to bring it back to like, how did I come across you? Like, obviously, I knew Chris McGibbon, and I'm trying to even think how I
Yep.
knew him, right? Like, I'm trying to think where I met Chris. I really have no idea. Like, we live pretty close.
Yeah, yeah, he's up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And he brought me into horror radio at the
Mhm.
time. I didn't know what a podcast was in 2009 when he contacted me. I didn't even. I'm not very tech savvy, especially back then. So like, I just get a random call from Boston, and somebody's asking me about a podcast. And I didn't realize my personal number was on Facebook. So that's how I met
Well,
Chris.
let me
And
ask you this though. How did he find you? Like, and how did that relationship with you guys start in the sense where he's contacting you to do a radio show? Like, where did you guys meet? Like in like a Facebook horror group? Like how did you come across how did he come across you?
he saw me posting movie updates, collection updates. I have probably, well, shit, I know Basement Blues is in the chat, so he might be about on par with me, but I have a really massive movie collection, and he noticed that, and he was doing what was called horror theater radio at the time, and he brought me in. I didn't know what a podcast was, and he referenced Dead Pit, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Dead Pit Radio.
Mhm.
You want me on a radio show?" So
Mhm.
that's how I met Chris, and he's done a lot of stuff at this point, a lot of actually really exciting stuff that I can't talk about now, but he's written for Fangoria, all sorts of neat stuff. So yeah, he brought me in, and that slowly led to YouTube. I don't know why we didn't do YouTube sooner though.
It was a different time then, man, and I was kind of almost like a collector. I mean, I've been a collector of physical media and horror stuff and a fan for so long, but
Mm-hmm.
I was really kind of around those Facebook groups, but I wasn't super active into like posting and all that stuff. Maybe I'd post some stuff, but interacting, it was just kind of at a minimal. But I came across I really still to this day don't know how I met Chris. But he because we live so close, like I mean, he got early screening passes to go see Evil Dead 2013. He asked
Yeah.
myself and my friend to go, and my friend and him and Kevin, like we all went, and I think that was
Mm-hmm.
the first time we had like hung out. And
Yeah.
I had seen
Kevin
him around
Hayes. Yeah.
conventions a lot. Rock and Shock, I had seen him and stuff, so we kind of knew each other through there. But I don't remember how it came across with the on Facebook. But with you, again, we went back to Dead Pit. Dead Pit was like my first introduction to like a podcast, like especially like I was really into the horror stuff. So they were
Mm-hmm.
my first introduction. I was hanging around the message boards, but again, I was somebody that was more like an let's see what these people are talking about. Let's see if they can give me recommendations on movies, what's good, what sucks. But I was never interacting on those message boards. Maybe with like Piz, I would like throw a message to or something. And I remember seeing like Jay the Stingray on there. Like there was a lot of people now that have channels and stuff that were just kind of in those message boards, talking with each other. And it's cool to see all these people that have come out and started their own thing. And I came across you somehow through a horror radio show. And I don't know if maybe Chris said, check this out. And you and Dead Pit were the two shows that I was listening to the most. And this, I'm trying to think, it was just you though. You were the only host, and you'd have guest hosts on sometimes. What would it have been?
Yeah, it was horror theater radio that became
Wasn't that
Creep Show Radio.
that's it.
Yeah, we became Creep Show Radio pretty quick, and then we were with Horror Society for a little bit, and that kind of eventually led to Flesh Wound Features. If you remember Todd, so I'm sure somebody out there, Flesh Wound Video, when that was a thing back in the day, you might have ordered movies from Todd, but that kind of is the story of how it became Flesh Wound Features.
He was Flesh Room Video?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting, man.
And Todd goes back to not quite as early as me, but he goes back to those days too. Everything kind of sprung from Dead Pit, really, in an off way. Like I didn't know those guys or anything, but yeah, Piz, Jay, I'm sure some of you guys in the chat, like Dead Pit was sort of the beginning, and you can tie different things back to it.
For real, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other. There's so many more. Slaughterport, I think, was one that he was.
Yeah.
I think he was in there. But yeah, it was nuts, and like you said, is obviously they might have started the trend, but you were kind of like you. For some reason, I felt like you were more East Coast, but you're not East Coast. But I think I was just kind of referring you to Chris. Where are you from, Dan?
I was born in DC, but I've lived like all over. So you would have known me probably when I was in West Virginia. So
Because I can
yeah.
remember looking at your Facebook, and you're right. You had like a basement with like shelving like all the way across, and I was like, dude, this guy's got everything. And that must have
Yeah.
been how I found you on social media. Was probably through Creep Show Radio, knowing the name. And I think you have a real good voice for radio.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You know, and you looked a lot different back then. No beard,
No
big beard
no.
back then. But yeah, so like your story with horror, like I love hearing people's stories. I love going back in time. Now again, I discovered you in maybe 2008, 2009 maybe is when I think I probably discovered Creep Show Radio. But like what was your introduction to horror? What was it like growing up? And you may have talked about this 1,000 times, but for some reason I just don't know that story.
No, well, I trace it back. I've been a horror fan since I was like 4. So, my earliest memories, it was always horror and professional wrestling, and kind of ended up doing both, although horror more successfully, I suppose. I did. I went to Catholic school as a child, so I always had kind of a sense of the Gothic, I think. That's a very common theme. A lot of diehard horror fans went to like some Catholic school, so I think I had the Gothic in me. Big inspirations from Clive Barker, Dave Cronenberg, the old Hammer films. Pretty similar story to a lot of people, and that kind of led me unexpectedly into radio when Chris snatched me off Facebook, and I did movies for a little while there. I was in 2 movies, believe it or not, with Cool Duder. So I made it.
Really?
But,
you were?
Sorry, Dead Pit, if you listen to this one. But yeah, technically. Never worked with them though. But
so you guys were just on the same movie, but you didn't see him on set or anything like that?
No, well, see, the thing with him back then that people don't realize, I talked to him once online, but he usually would shoot his own stuff and send it in to be inserted in the movie. So
was it Banshee that you were in? What were you in?
I was in with him, Ghoulish Tales and MILFs versus Zombies.
It's right up your alley, man.
Yeah, classics.
That's funny, man. Sean's interesting. I don't know him per se. I'd met him once. He's obviously an OG in this YouTube space, right? So you gotta give him credit. And I'll give him all the credit in the world for being a kid that started doing this shit, that was collecting this, that, and this, and he's making movies now. I mean, how can you really fault that? How can you really? I mean, that's he's living his dream, I guess, right? He made it work to an extent. And I talked about this with Wet Movie, is that I don't know him per se. Like, I mean, I've chatted with him in the past, like maybe probably around the time I chatted with you when he wasn't where he is now. He was a little bit more, easily attainable as far as like chit chat and whatnot. And he was always fine, always pretty cool. But now it's like he's interesting because I've never heard from him. I've never seen him like a picture on Instagram or whatever. But then all of a sudden, randomly, he started following me. And I was like, that's cool. Sean's following me, blah, blah. And then it was just he needed money for his projects or whatever,
Everybody's gotten the Amityville.
I'm sure you did. Did you get it? Did you get that message?
Yeah, which is weird too, because I mean, I've kind of like playfully teased him on podcasts. So I open a message. I was like, oh, he's mad because we reviewed, I think, Amityville Karen. Was that the last? Yeah, and I was like,
I never watched it, but no, but
you're good.
He was in he had a cool, like, when he was doing roles, I thought that one he did was okay. What was it, Ghost Shark or something? I thought it was okay. Like,
Ghost Shark's funny. I will.
Yeah, like I thought it was, and again, I just kind of wish, I know he has some issue. He had issues with Deadpit. I get it, right? So like I understand that whole thing, and at this point, I would hope that it could have been squashed because it was kind of silly at the grand scheme of things. But I wish he was a little more involved in the community. Being where he is, because then it wouldn't be such a problem where all of a sudden you just don't you hear from him and he's like, hey man, like I could use your help, blah blah. I don't mind helping people out, but then all of a sudden it's funny because the other day I got a follow from him again on Instagram. So I was like, that's freaking weird. Like he already followed me. So what do you do? Unfollow me and then follow me again? Right. So now I'm assuming that I'm like, oh, he must have a new movie coming. Right. So then it's just, that's what's weird. Right. Like I have nothing against him and I would love to help the guy out, but like act like you give a shit. Right. Like, did you unfollow me because I didn't give you money the first time and now you followed me again because it's almost time to ask? Like, I don't get it. Like I would never unfollow somebody, right? It was just interesting to me on how he does things. Like to me, I just feel like good for him. He's getting the money to finance these movies, so he's doing something right.
Yeah.
The business practices that I see from my end, I'm kind of like, man, like you could do so much better to market this out than what you're doing,
Yeah, it's hard to give money for that because I know he kind of comes from Marvel money, I think it was, or DC money, comic book money.
Does he? Oh, his father was an illustrator, right?
Yeah, something like that. That's why, and hey, I respect the hustle, but that's why you started seeing him kind of do the Lloyd Kaufman thing where he would show up for like 10 seconds in a bunch of really small indie movies because that's all he had to do. So, he amassed a following. I mean, he is one of the early YouTube people, which I was kind of oblivious to YouTube because we were on Blog Talk Radio. So we were kind of like on an island. I knew who Dead Pit was because, of course, they were the originals. But, I had no idea who Piz was until we jumped on YouTube during the pandemic. All of that was just an island. We were an island on Blog Talk back in the day. But, yeah, it's cool. Everybody has connections in this community, which I always find fascinating.
It is very fascinating because who would have ever thought in 2023 a guy from Virginia that had a radio show that I was listening to on a regular basis, I'm going to be sitting here talking with right now. Like it never in a million years with this. Who would have ever thought that I'd be doing shows with Dead Pit? It never in a million years would have ever. Who would have thought I would have been doing a show with Wet Movie One? I mean, it just didn't make it. It just never would have. If you would have asked me that back then, I'd have been like, "What? What do you mean?" Like, but it's so weird how easy people can get connected.
Yeah.
In this space, right? And the space to me seems so small now because everybody is intertwined with each other in some way. And even the same thing like Piz, I knew him before I got on YouTube. I knew him. We had done trades in the past. We did a small show with Wes called WrestleManiacs for a little while with Piz, and him and Wes were the two that really pushed me to kind of start the whole YouTube thing. And I met up with Piz at a convention once, and we hung out and all that stuff. And Piz was basically someone that popped out of Dead Pit, right? Because he was like a big fan, and then he was kind of getting into some stuff. I think they even had him on their show a couple times doing little like clips here and there to kind of get him the ball rolling and stuff like that. And then he got on YouTube and kept hustling and doing his thing. And it is just so funny that, I've done shows with him and you've done shows with him and how everybody's kind of intertwined, but at the same time, going back and we're kind of bouncing around, but the horror YouTuber of the month was another whole thing, right? So I won and I nominated people, and then you won from my nominations and whatnot. And, I know a lot of people right now that have really good channels that are small, right? And I was like, we don't know where that horror YouTube thing went. Like, I was curious. I'm like, where would it have gone in a year? Because all I knew is it went to you, and then I'm not sure who it went to. Maybe it went to
Savage Zombie Reviews
did it? And then I'm like, I didn't know if it went to Slasher Home Video or something. Then it went somewhere, but then I kind of lost track of it. And I said, you know what? If this thing just sizzled out and died, I'm like, I'm gonna bring it back and like nominate some of these younger channels that I'm finding. So I thought I was gonna like resurge this damn thing.
It's still going.
It's going, man. And that's what's so funny is like we live in this space that I feel like we're all intertwined and connected. And then when I kind of found where this thing was, I'm like, holy shit, this is like a black hole of like horror, physical media, community. that I know nobody in. And it's so weird, like see how far these realms of this physical media horror community is when you think you're in like the bubble of it, right? And like it's got all these little places, and I'm like, where am I? I'm like looking at all the people in the comments. I'm like, I know none of these people. I don't. It was weird, man. It just goes to show you like how big this is.
Horror and pro wrestling, there's something about it because even Todd, who's the producer for Flesh Wound Features and owned Flesh Wound Video back in the day, he I didn't know him, but I knew him years ago. We both went to XPW events, and we were there when Vic Grimes got thrown off the scaffold by New Jack.
Wow.
You know, we didn't know each other. Pugs was there at that time. And then it all kind of comes back. And now Todd in particular is doing stuff for XPW. And it has a weird way of circling around. I never would have thought, you know, Rob Black, the guy that, you know, had a federal case and then, you know, was able to bring XPW back from the dead. And, you know, they're doing fantastic right now. They've been going viral. And I was at a show a few months ago in Los Angeles, and I think I said at one point to Todd, I was like, how weird is this? Like, we were in the same tiny arena years ago, then we end up right back. We didn't know each other, but XPW brought us back. And it's the same thing with horror. I'm great friends with Jay and Corey and Jake, and seems like pretty much all of these guys were fans of Dead Pit back in the day. And like I said, I don't know Wes or Uncle Bill very well, but they still had such a huge impact on the community. I know they had their documentary a while back, but I feel like there's more of a story to tell there, because it not even just them, just so much sprung out of Dead Pit. It's amazing. I don't think the full story's been told.
I agree, and I think that a couple things is that I think there is more of a story to tell. I think that somebody should get on that. I think, you know, I think Christian did a pretty damn good job when he had each of them on, kind of telling their story of Dead Pit and their history. I think he did really, really well with that. Talking to Wes, then getting Uncle Bill's side, and there was similarities, there was differences between what they remember at the time and what the other one doesn't, whose fault it was. You know, I thought that was a really cool thing that he did with having them each on separately. And, you know, I have something that I'm working on with them right now about kind of my history with them. Like, how did I meet them? Where, you know, what was my first thoughts when I heard them on the radio? Because coming from the Northeast and hearing these guys, I remember at the time, my girlfriend at the time was like, those aren't real. That's not their real voice. You know, like she thought it was all gimmick, like, you know, and, it's just interesting. Like, I wanted to do a show on my channel, like my history with them, and like, how the hell did I get involved in this, right? And like what they remember and what I remember in this whole thing. But I think, like you said, there is a way bigger story to tell, and like you said, how impactful they were and how it has branched all this other shit off, and how it all kind of comes back to that, because I still don't think they get enough credit right now for what they really did for this community, even spawning into YouTube and whatnot, because I think that they really did themselves a disservice in that 5-year hiatus when YouTube was really kicking on. And, you know, they had a YouTube channel, but it was like very small. They were posting like funny clips, but nothing serious, like taking the show to that. They were doing MySpace shows. Like that was, you know, a big thing back then. So, you know, you always wonder what could have been if they would have got on and went heavy and hard, like when Piz did, you know, and stuff like that. And even same thing with you. Like, I always look at that too. And I think to myself, like, how are you not more, you know, looked up to in this community, because you've been around for so long, and, you know, you look at all that shit behind you, and man, I say this all the time. Thank God we got into this collecting when we did, because how much would all those autographs have cost you if you went to a convention today? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, I've been collecting so long. When I tell people I live in a library, I mean, this is just, you're just looking at an autograph wall. I do have rows throughout the whole house, so it is a literal library of movies. I've been redesigning shelves right now, because even for me, space starts to become an issue. It's just, there's there's only so many
Mhm.
places to put stuff. So I was like, all right, I got to go straight down the middle of my rooms and just have shelves mushed up against each other on each side. So it is more of a library than an actual house right now. So,
So
yeah,
that's spanning in many different areas at this point?
yeah. There are there's 5 rooms of just movies at this point.
Mhm. That's so
So
funny.
yeah,
You're
it's pretty
you're living
bad.
it over there.
Yeah.
Uh, and is it well, before we go move on, I just want to say what's up to a lot of people. Ben Grimm, Brian Trash, what is going on? Slash a home video. There you are, man. Welcome. Planet CHH, Christian. Hey now, what's up, man? Brian Trash, Jay the Stingray in here. A lot of people we've been talking about.
Mm.
Mel is in here from My Killer Podcast. 1/3 of the Rad Pack. If you guys are watching this, go check out the Rad Pack YouTube channel. Go check out obviously Dan Shine over at Flesh Wound Features channel as well. Brian Trash says Piz was a gateway for him. And Jay the Stingray says, what is going on? But yeah, and again, going back to like we said, is there is a bigger story to tell, and I think that someone should tell it, and because there's so much to it that I think we don't even really realize at the time, and it is like I said, crazy that in this realm, I'm still finding YouTubers that are doing this kind of stuff that I know, and I've been watching YouTube. I mean, since like 2006, maybe when like Cool Duder and Wet Movie were like the only 2 people doing this kind of physical media stuff, and I'm still finding people now. Like I didn't know Christian until I started YouTube, and Christian was known by quite a bit of people up until that point. And I've only
Yeah.
been on this since 2020, at the end of 2020, and I didn't know him before that. And he had quite a bit of following at that point. I just found out about like a lot. Okay, who's like one of the biggest YouTubers that do horror in your opinion right now?
Well, if you're talking in terms of subs, I
Just
assume
just size of like how
Dead
massive.
Meat, I think, is the
Okay,
top one.
right.
Yeah.
I've heard about them. I had never seen their show until they just did a Lost Boys one. Now think about that.
Yeah.
I just found out them like recently. Like they're the biggest, and like they never for some reason crossed my path until like very recently. And that's what's just so weird about this is that like you're still finding people in this space in this realm, and you're like, how did I not know about this person? And then you feel like you start to feel like you know everybody.
Yeah, I like their channel, of course. They have a great channel. Sometimes you almost lose a little bit of that one-on-one, sort of personal connections when you get that big. I think they're like
Mm-hmm.
what 2 or 3 million subs
Yes.
now. They're
Yeah.
massive. I don't think anybody's close, but yeah, there's so many small ones. Even I find channels every day that I didn't know existed, and I'll automatically sub to anybody's horror channel. I think it's awesome. There's channels that I've never done a show with them, but it's awesome to see them grow. I mean, I know Jay's in the chat. Like he knew, I think Piz when he had just 1,000 maybe subs, if
Oh
that.
yeah. I can remember
Yeah,
watching Piz's first video, like the first time he did it. I think he was standing like, I don't know, in front of like a clock or a cabinet in his like
yeah.
kitchen or something. It was like in a weird spot, right? Like I can remember that. I think you had like a button down shirt on or whatever, but like, yeah. And to think how kind of that's evolved, right? Like it is wild to think about what's happened in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'll get like videos that pop up with Piz from like I think 16 years ago now. So it is wild. We've done it a very long time, but it took some getting used to on video because Blog Talk you just call in on our
Mm,
landline, and I would just do the show in my boxers in my living room. So it was
right.
kind of an adjustment getting used to YouTube. I don't know why we didn't do it years ago. I think just we were kind of comfortable there. We had our following there, and I don't know, maybe it was more of a technology thing. That's probably more of an
Mhm.
issue to talk to Chris about. But in retrospect, yeah, it would have been nice to start in 2009 on YouTube.
For sure. And I mean, even think about Chris too, someone who's so involved in the horror community for a bunch of different things. And again, he's still
Yeah.
doing stuff, right? Like still doing big things, but he's not someone that's in front of the camera. He's not somebody that everybody's seeing on a regular basis to be like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, Chris McGibbon. Of course he'd be doing something like that. Like he's a very behind the scenes guy, to an extent. And I'm surprised at this point that he hasn't done more when it came to like creating a brand for himself on YouTube or anything like that. I'm shocked because he does seem like he's got. I mean, he's done Facebook lives, he's done Instagram lives. I mean, I don't understand why he never went this route. That would be a great conversation, maybe, to have him on to explain that, because he seems like he would be somebody that would be pretty comfortable, bullshitting in front of a camera.
Yeah, he does a podcast with Michael Felsher on Spotify. I can tell you, I mean, there's a few things he's involved with that everybody in the horror community is going to be doing YouTube videos on probably later this year, hopefully.
I have a little bit of he hits me up with a little bit of scoops going on there here and there, but he just gives me enough. You know what I mean? Like he hints a lot, and it's a pretty like obvious hint, but he won't come blatantly, say what it is. So but yeah, I mean, that's what's so crazy though, is that that's where he is, but he never really took it to more of like beyond an audio type podcast. And he's really good at it, for sure. But, he's got a lot of connections as well in the community and with horror celebrities and all this other stuff. And you said, he kind of brought you to the dance in a sense. And I mean, now when it came to the podcast with you, like, I know, like I said, Creepshow Radio was the big one that I loved from you. Do you remember, did you always have a similar format that you continued with throughout all your podcasts? Because I'm just trying to remember in my head, like, what set you apart from Dead Pit, where I wasn't hearing the same things back and forth. Like, what was your format for something like Creepshow Radio? Do you remember back then?
So at one point, and this, I want to say we were the first to do, we had a show 5 days a week, but it was all different style of shows. Brian Harris, who's a writer you may have heard of, he did one. Kevin Hayes, who I think I know he was on once in a while. And we, Lewis Paul, who does, or at least did, I think he still does, all of the celebrity interviews at Chiller Theater. He had a show.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like a network, and it was pretty unique what we were doing back then. So yeah, it was like 5 days a week. And then I usually tended to be on like a couple different ones with Jen, and then Melissa, who I think she does stuff with Trick or Treat Radio now, I believe. So yeah, everybody's kind of branched off and done their own things. People have worked on movies. Chris got to write for Fangoria when we had Chris Alexander on the show, and during a podcast, it came up about writing an article on Video Dead, and he was just like, "Yeah, why don't you just do it?" And he got a Fangoria gig on the show, so it was pretty unique. It definitely wouldn't last on YouTube today because, well, as you probably know, we were a little more adult. So, like,
well, on this channel, I think you can get away with that too, right?
S'mores, he's cool with it. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, like, so, that was the thing, like you said, like having that network. I kind of vaguely remember that because I can remember you guys like announcing like what the week was going to look like on the channel, kind of, like, oh, this guy's going to be on Monday, I'm on Tuesday, whatever it was. And I'm trying to think, was your intro, "We've got such sights to show you, join us"? Was that you?
Yeah,
that was the intro, right, for the show. But yeah, did you guys talk mostly about, like, did you do like a news segment, a physical media segment? Like, how did you structure that show? I'm just trying to bring back memories on that, because obviously I used you as a huge resource for me.
For us, we would do sort of like the casual, open, how's your day going? Talk about news, different releases that we were picking up. Then we would go into movie reviews. Those shows back then were really, really long. Like with Melissa, I know sometimes we would review like 10 movies in a week. Like, it was crazy back then. We have a similar format, I guess, now. We don't do like 5 hour streams
right.
often, but yeah, we have a similar similar format on Flesh Wound Features. There's certain things that kind of stuck over the years, and we had the wrestling podcast too, and we do that with Squared Circle Society once in a while. We cover XPW, so always try to give people a little bit of everything. Some of the stuff that doesn't get talked about, particularly back then, and I know Dead Pit was great with that too, because there was a time where, believe it or not, Italian horror, it wasn't covered as often as the usual 80s slashers that you would get, Halloween, Friday the 13th.
No, I learned most of my stuff from listening to you guys' podcast. Like, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of that stuff. My uncle has got me into horror, but I mean, the main ones he would tell me, like The Beyond and stuff like that. But like a lot of those other ones I wasn't really familiar with until I listened to you guys and then picked them up for the first time. So you're right. It wasn't something that was talked about regularly at all. And it still really isn't, I don't think, to an extent. Like, there might be more people that dedicate it towards it, but we're seeing a lot more of it in the mainstream when it comes to these boutique labels putting them out and getting more eyeballs on it and stuff like that. But so when did you guys finally make the transition to YouTube? Have you been down here for a while? Or I think you've been on a lot less than not
long.
Thought you did.
It was either right before or right at the beginning of the pandemic. It might have been right before. And I think that was part of the catalyst, where it was just like, why are we not on YouTube? It came up again, and there really wasn't any reason. So yeah, we did. It doesn't automatically port over everybody that listened to you on Blog Talk, unfortunately, but it's a grind. We've been debating monetization now, which we can do, but it's sort of like, I don't know. Like, YouTube's weird. I know you got hit. I know. No reason.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, again, it really goes back to, it's hard to say not the why or whatever. Like, why am I doing this? I don't think I'm going to make tons of money doing this at all. Like, it's not even in my head that this could ever be a full-time gig for me, but I just think I like to see that there's opportunity and reward if, for whatever reason. Right. So to me, it's kind of important.
Christian with the wax melts. I mean,
of course. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, and I think what happens is, when there's when you're shut down and you're not demonetized, then obviously you're still doing it for fun, but you just don't see that there's any progress when it comes to that. It doesn't, but for you, I would say, I guess it comes down to your content. Like, do you think that you're in a safer zone without being it than having to fight back and forth with like them, blocking videos and doing it? Because that becomes a pain in the ass sometimes. And I feel like, I'll do a video. I did one with Captain Horror the other day, and I thought it was a fine talk. There was nothing going on. And then of course I get a thing saying like, half your revenue for the stream is gone because there was, content that we didn't agree with. And it's like, do you want to fight this, or do you want, and it's just like, now I got to fight it. Like, and I'm like, what did we say? You know what I mean? Like, what did I say on that channel that was like deemed like that people wouldn't like, or that YouTube didn't like, or sponsors wouldn't like, and I'm like, I don't know what was said. Like, it could have been just something silly and small talk, but we didn't watch any clips. We didn't do anything like that.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily profanity from what I've been told. Like, there's not banned words as such. It can be, like if we wanted to do a show on women in prison movies, well, that may not be too popular as far as the algorithm goes. That doesn't mean we don't talk about it. There's some shows we'll do where I know it's not going to get a lot of listens, but I kind of care more about the overall quality than trying to get a bunch of lists. Although, go figure, our smutty shows tend to do the best. So
we can get back into that actually, but I just want to give a shout out right here to Jay the Stingray, because he says Ryan 1988 should have a lot more subs. You're right. Justin was another one that was on YouTube very early. Like, he was like legit like 16 or something when he went on, because I remember he was somebody I had followed for a while. And you're right, he does deserve more. I think with Justin, he took hiatuses a lot, and I think that may have hindered him a little bit from really breaking through. Is that he was I think he took like a year off, or 6 months off, will come back to so I don't know if that
Dead Pit would be on the top if they
If
didn't take the 5 years off, honestly.
I agree. I think so
Yeah.
too. And I think what happened now is that I was talking to somebody about this today, actually, is that Dead Pit says a lot of their like real loyal like followers from the podcast days, they don't know where these people are anymore. Like the ones that would call in on a
Yeah.
regular. He goes, haven't seen them come through, haven't heard them come through, don't know if they're even alive. Like that's what's crazy is like you said, the port over isn't that easy. And he's talking, they're talking about 20 to 30 people that would call in weekly that they haven't seen on a YouTube chat since they started YouTube, right? So you
Yeah.
look at that and they do have a lot of very loyal followers still, like very loyal supporters that, to be honest, a lot of them could secretly hate me, I'm sure. And I'm sure they probably tell Wes and Uncle Bill all the time that they do. I don't know. I mean, no one said it to me, but I don't expect them not to, some of them, because I'm not really like Wes and UB that much. I am, but I'm not, right? So either people are going to think that dynamic is great or not. The same way when Steve was brought in, a lot of people were like, they didn't like it, right? So people don't necessarily like change. And but it is wild to see that they even said a lot of their regulars have not shown up on any chats or anything like that on YouTube, and they don't know where these people are anymore, which is just crazy. And that's what I was going to say to you is that did you feel so? Did Flesh Wound Features start on YouTube, or was that your last podcast that you transferred over?
No, we were still Blog Talk when we became Flesh Wound Features.
Okay.
And then we finally made the jump. I've been doing it nonstop since I guess it was 09 or the end of 08. Can't remember the exact date. So it's constantly evolved, and it's been interesting. And you never know. Like we had a guy contact us a while ago, maybe a year ago, and he's not somebody that's in the chats, but his brother had unfortunately taken his life during the pandemic. He had some issues, and he sent a message like that. We got him through it. Like it's like, wow, like we just make boob jokes and talk about horror movies. Like that really got you through that. That's amazing. So yeah, I think the shows mean a lot. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations about Dead Pit with some of the guys that really go back to it more than I did, because I was aware of them, but I didn't always listen. And they said it was just such an inspiration. People that talked like they do, because a lot of horror, Fangoria, it's kind of East Coast. There's a lot of New Yorkers, a lot of East Coast people like us, but Dead Pit was like kind of like that outlet for people.
They were kind of like the ECW of like
the
horror, like it was like that underground, like where are these guys from? Like that's what I thought. I'm thinking these guys have cabins in like near the swamp. I didn't know like what they are. And even still, if I was to go down to where they live, and it's been talked about me going down and visiting and hitting up like Scarefest or whatever, I would probably be blown away in their town, because it's just probably nothing I've seen before. Like even when I watched the documentary on there of theirs, and I look at that now and I'm like, wow, it just seemed like such a different place. Like they almost seem like they're 10 years behind, right? Like where I am, like where we are and where I live and stuff. So it would be interesting to kind of just be in an area like that where they live and whatnot. And
I lived in West Virginia for 10 years, so I kind of get it for sure. There's horror hubs. Kentucky is a huge horror hub. And I know you live in a horror hub as well. You're in Lovecraft country.
Well, it's funny because I do, but at the same time, it's like I don't really know a lot of people around here. Like I did like a stream, like I don't know, 1,000 sub stream, and all of a sudden I'm looking, I'm like, holy shit, like I have like 5 guests and 4 of them from Kentucky, right? Like it's wild. Like there's nobody from my area on here. Like I don't know a lot of, I know Chris, but yeah, I don't know. Like there probably is a big market over here, but for some reason I just haven't went through it.
Oh yeah, no, you're in Lovecraft country.
Well, yeah, you got Salem here, you get all,
Yeah. I've been meaning actually to go down to Salem for a while now for a visit. I've got to make that happen, maybe this year or something. Probably be at Scarefest. So I know there's a lot of, I'm hoping, I'm trying to work it out. I go back to LA for XPW Genocide at the end of August. So I'm like, this is kind of like a year where I'm doing a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So I might try and make it back to Scarefest. And I know a lot of people go there. Piz goes.
Mm-hmm.
I missed him, but I think Uncle Bill was there last time.
Yeah, he was. And I think
Yeah.
he went on like just him on Sunday. I think he went by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I really did want to go. I know it's probably a September show, I think, but
Mhm.
dude, there's so much going on. Like I was just telling somebody today, like the convention scene right now where I am is insane. Like I'm just trying to think. Boston Comic Con is August 6th, and like I want to go because Sam Raimi's going to be there, and that's just somebody I just never had the opportunity to meet before. So I was like, I might want to go and get something signed or whatever. And
How
then
much is he charging?
I don't know, man. I didn't even look,
Yeah.
but he would be the only reason I'd go. I mean, it's
Mm.
got a big lineup, but it's nobody like Hayden Christensen's there. Like there's a lot of people, but there's nobody else I would really care. So I might go in, pay whatever needs to be paid, get out, have my Army Darkness poster signed or Evil Dead or whatever I decide to do. And then 2 weeks later, Silver Scream Con, which is their second convention in Mass, is happening, and they've got a stacked lineup. And there's other people from YouTube that are going to head there, so I'm going to meet with them. And then a week later is TerraCon, which is stacked. And then 2 weeks after that is Connecticut Horror Fest. It's like, it's crazy. Like, so I'm like, I can't hit all these up. There's no way. And then at the same time, like, well, then I can't go to Scare. Like, it's just so much. And I'm like, this is crazy that it's been dormant for so long that all of a sudden we're getting all these conventions in like one hit.
Yeah. No, I started going to conventions in 1994. And I started with Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. I could have gone to the New York show in 96 that had Fulci, and I didn't. So like I've seen conventions truly evolve from something that was totally unrecognizable in the 90s to what it's kind of become now, which I don't know. I feel like that needs to be reclaimed a little bit. I think stuff like True Blood, Walking Dead, they just got so huge and so mainstream that it started to become, it didn't really feel like that small, intimate horror crowd anymore.
No.
It was the mainstreamers, and nothing against that. Just,
sure.
That's what it was.
I just don't know how there's any going backwards at this point, though. That's the only thing that sucks, is because my first convention might have been like 07 maybe. So I know I hit the first Rock and Shock. That might have been my first. So whatever that was. So maybe 08 perhaps. And again, it still felt small. True Blood, I don't think was out yet. I don't think Walking Dead definitely wasn't out yet. But like I met Corey Haim. I was able to kind of come across him. Like it was like his first convention or whatever. So I was able to get a lot of stuff done early, thank God. Like I think I met Robert Englund. I think he was $25, right? So
yeah, I remember that.
I was able to get a picture and a bunch of stuff signed from him, thankfully. So I did see that. I actually was at a Monster Mania that Argento was there.
Yeah.
And I remember standing in line, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'll come back and I'm going to go get this. I'm going to come back. And then for whatever reason, I never got it. And it's one of those things that it's like, man, like, I can't believe I just missed out on that. But you're right. Like, even just in that short time that I was going, it's so different than it was those first couple of years. And I just don't think it's going back to it, because a lot of these celebrities now that are charging and making all this money, do you think they're ever going to backpedal now?
No, people kind of have to stop paying it. The last Scarefest I was at, I did get Alan Troutman to sign my Return of the Living Dead figure, and that was it. And as you can tell, like in the past, I was a big autograph collector, but now it's just kind of like, I just miss meeting people at conventions, which you used to be able to do. Now it's just, okay, I'm going to wait for 2 hours in this line, then maybe 3 hours in this line if you want to meet Norman Reedus. So,
agree. Dude, I must have walked by Norman Reedus like 10 times saying to and he would be sitting there by himself with the other dude, Flannery, and for Boondock Saints, and like with no line. And I'm like,
nobody cared.
And I just said like, I'll get him eventually. I'll get him eventually because he's always here, And then all of a sudden, like a year later, there's like lines going around the whole building for him. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
True story. And people were making fun of him for it, but This was before Walking Dead, which was 2010, I think. So it was before that, and they were at the little like deli at the convention, and they must have been working out, so they had no shirts on, and they were
Really?
like flirting with the girl behind the counter, and
Sick.
like, and nobody really cared. I don't think she knew who they were. So I even remember people that hit it. Well, at least Norman Reedus. I feel terrible because now a lot of times they'll still be booked together, but it'll be like Flannery and he's got two
Mhm.
people, and then
Mhm.
Reedus has got like a line around the building.
It's
So
just that
yeah,
you just the luck of the roll, man, really was.
yeah, yeah. Flannery, I would say, is more talented, but
Mhm.
Reedus got the big break that
I
no
mean,
one
if
could
you would have
afford.
asked me from watching Boondock Saints which these two guys are gonna break out, I would have said Flannery all day.
Yeah, yeah,
By
no,
the
I mean,
look, by everything.
Flannery's a talented guy. He was just in a movie called Nefarious, which is kind of like it's a horror film, but it's kind of like two guys in a room, battle of wits kind of thing. And I was like, man, how was he not some huge star? He had the look of a leading
Mhm.
man. He
Mhm.
could genuinely act. He could do crazy. He could be the standard Hollywood hero, and he just never got there. It was bizarre,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I don't know how you could have predicted Daryl and that phenomenon. I because I flash forward to when Walking Dead was a thing. There was a girl in line that passed out
It's wild.
in front of me. Like this guy that was shirtless trying to hit on the sandwich lady. Uh, you know,
Right.
yeah. Now he's a superstar. It's wild.
Yeah, I just don't know how you bring conventions back anymore. Just like I think they've gotten too big that I just don't know where the how you go any like some of these celebrities that were charging 15, $20 that now can get away with charging 80 like
Yeah,
it's just wild. But that's why I'm always thankful that I was in the game early because I can have and like you all these pictures on the wall of these people, a lot of them dead now, which is even more crazy, right?
yeah,
And so now if I end up going to a convention, like I may just be like, I'm getting one. Somebody that maybe was on a bucket list. Like I met Elizabeth Shue, who of course was like nobody that was hanging around the convention scene when we were going. And I knew if it was going to be now or never. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get her. This is it. Blah, blah, blah. And that's what happened. Like before, I'd leave with like 20 autographs. It's not like that anymore. You financially, it's not going to happen. And there's not. And luckily, I can look around and say, yeah, they don't care about these people to have it, or I already own it. You know,
if you look through I mean, these are some of the 8x10s over that on that wall, but uh most of them 20, maybe 30 in some
Mm,
cases, but like usually not more than that. It's just it has kind of gotten out of control. And I don't want to say I don't want to support it, but I kind of got burnt out because a lot of people don't remember just how awesome Fangoria Weekend of Horrors was way back in the day. I can remember having conversations with celebrities, like real conversations, not
mm,
just hey, how are you? They sign your stuff and that's it. I Angus Scrim, one of the most nicest human beings ever in our genre. I can remember just sitting and talking to him and Gunnar Hansen
mm,
in the lobbies of hotels. They actually liked talking to you, and you could kind of feel that. Like they weren't
mm.
just there to make, I mean, obviously you got to make your money, but they weren't just there for that. You could tell it was a genuine interaction rather than just a business thing,
Sure.
you know? And
I don't know if you ever attended, but I'm going to say if I have to go and think about which convention do I still think is the closest to an old school convention is Chiller Theater. I don't know if you've ever been.
yeah. Oh, I
Just
went all the time. We met there for 2 seconds. I don't know if you remember.
no, did
I'm
I?
pretty yeah, I think I met you, and I'm not sure which one that would have been at. I
Wow,
wanna
that's
say
crazy. I don't
maybe
recall
one of
this.
the Italian invasions, but I'm not 100% sure. But I do believe I met you for, like
Do you
it
know
might
who
have
I
been
would have
one
been with, or who were you with? Do you know?
I don't think I know I went to a Monster Mania with Chris. I don't think I ever did a chiller with Chris. Um,
I did. I mean, I do
yeah.
Monster Mania a lot. Maybe it was there. I don't remember, but I like Chiller
I
and Monster
could be
Mania are the
missed
two.
I could be misremembering. It could have been Monster Mania because they do kind of bleed together.
Right.
At one
But
point, I was doing like 6 or 7 a year. I was just
right.
nuts.
But Chiller still does okay. Like, I mean, yeah, the prices have gone up for some of these celebs and stuff, but
Yeah.
I mean, it still does have that. It doesn't have that convention hall feel like a lot of these things do. Like the
Yeah.
ones that are massive, like the TerraCon, Comic Con, like all these
Mhm.
things are just you're in a convention hall and like you're basically waiting in line for hours. Like,
Yeah.
nowadays, if like for instance, Sam Raimi, I mean, who knows what my day is going to look like? I might get there at 9 and be in line till about. I mean, I don't know what to expect.
Have you like pre-booked
Not yet,
something?
but I've got to do it.
Yeah, because I'd imagine with him, if it's in a convention center, sometimes it's not bad because they'll tell you when to line up and they're usually pretty
Mhm.
efficient. Because I've done like Wizard World stuff and they're pretty efficient, I will say, usually when they're in that. The thing is you lose that, kind of intimacy where you can like actually talk
Yeah.
to somebody. It's gonna be like, have whatever question you want to ask in your head because you're
Oh
gonna get
yeah,
maybe 10
for sure. It's
seconds.
it's in and out. They're trying to see how many people they can get done as quick as possible. Because the lines are so huge. Chiller, everybody's like each celebrity is like they're all in like rooms. So like you'll go into a room and there'll be 5 people's table there, and it's very still like interacting. Like who did I meet recently? Is what's his name? The dude who played in 3 o'clock High. He was Crisp in Kindergarten Cop. What's his name there?
Oh,
I
three
have
o'clock high. Wow, I just got that on Blu-ray. I haven't watched that in years.
um
Richard Tyson?
Yeah, I'm looking back there. I bought I bought brass
Yeah.
knuckles from him and he signed them. Dude, I
Oh,
sat there
nice.
and we talked to him for about 15 minutes like that day.
Yeah.
He came around, he was doing pictures, he was talking to us about like I mean, it still does have that feel. I mean, and I highly recommend if anybody is interested in checking conventions out there. Again, it's yes and no. Like that has a feel, but then if you're in the main ballroom, then it's a little bit more like you're waiting in these huge lines type of thing for like different people. Like what's the guy
Yeah.
Bolo Young was there or whatever, so he had a huge line
Oh,
wrapping around
well,
the
he
place and
deserves
stuff.
it.
Of course,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So that was cool, but I do see some more people popping in the chat that I want to say hi to. Slaughterport, we talked about you earlier, man. Orc, that's another dead pit message board guy right there.
Oh, gee. Yeah.
Corey, what's going on, man? But yeah, so into the this is kind of a funny one. Into the convention thing, I was always big into it. I knew you were obviously when I used to see your collection on Facebook or MySpace or wherever it was that I found you for
Mhm.
the first time. But you always it always fascinated me because you were doing all this stuff, and I knew of you from the podcast. And then I can remember coming across your thing where you were going to porn conventions. Now you were like the only person that I ever knew that was attending those. And
Yeah, they're a
what
little
what
different.
was what what was that like? And like how did you get like it was like I didn't even know that existed. And it pretty much seemed like it was set up very similar as like a horror convention to an extent. People had tables and booths and
It's different and it's been a while, but yeah, it was the AVN Expo and the award show, which ironically there's people I'm friends with now that yeah, were involved in that scene too, but yeah, no, you didn't pay for autographs really. You paid to get in to the casino that hosted it or the convention center, whatever it was. And usually all the autographs were free because it was like a normal expo, so it was kind
Mhm.
of what conventions used to be. There were a few girls that might charge a nominal autograph fee, but generally speaking, everything was free. All the companies were there. I got to have drinks with Ron Jeremy, who not so popular
Right,
anymore,
right.
and James Dean was really cool. Joanna Angel, who's a legit horror fan, actually, too. A lot of different people. Those things are wild. I'm sure it had to have changed a
I was
lot.
gonna say, are they still a thing? Do you know?
I don't know that they could get away with what it used to be. I mean, you probably saw some of the Facebook, but well, the
I
ones I
remember
could
pictures
post.
of you with them, like you would take
Yeah,
a table picture with anybody else, right? And maybe they were a little bit more, dressed a little bit more scandalous or whatever, but or with
yeah.
not much on at all. But I mean, it didn't. It kind of seemed like what I would expect, but I just didn't realize that something like that ever existed.
I don't think you could do them today. Well, not. I mean, they still do, but I mean, there were like whipping seminars like
Right.
in this public place. You know, it was huge. I mean, it looked like a Wizard World
Right.
Comic-Con, and I remember I used to go all the time. Dennis Rodman would just randomly show up. I bumped into Dennis Rodman, Pauly Shore.
Nice.
Uh, I think some of the Jackass guys were there one year. Um, some like really big celebrities. I think Mickey Rourke might have been there. I don't think I actually met him, but yeah, I met Pauly Shore, Dennis Rodman, like just walking, buying adult movies. It's
Right.
pretty wild stuff.
Now, was like again, you it did feel huge. It felt like it was in like these convention halls. Now, was it busy? Like that's what it's confusing to me just because I never heard of it before. So it was like, was there a lot of people at this event?
Huge. Yeah, no, even just Hollywood people too. Like it because they'd have the separate ceremony, which they used to air on maybe Showtime or something. They'd have the AVN Awards, so you could go to that separate than the giant expo. Like I said, I'd be curious, and I don't know if anybody will listen to this that still goes, because I would imagine it's changed. I don't know that there was supposed to be like nudity going on, but it did. There was some crazy
I
stories that
bet.
I won't get Corey's channel deleted, but
Well, I
there
mean,
was
the
some.
guy did a
Yeah,
full tournament. He's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we've done a lot of tournaments, so he's probably okay. But yeah,
what's up, Dirk? I see you in the
hey.
chat, brother. And Corey's in the chat too. He's making sure we're behaving ourselves. So what's the world coming to? G-rated superstar talks porn on porn conventions. It's not my channel, pal.
There you go. I was gonna say.
Yeah. um. So yeah, I just always thought that was kind of interesting, like about that, because I had
Mhm.
never even heard of something like that. And I remember seeing those pictures and being like, "Wow, this is craziness! Like this guy's
Yeah.
everywhere." You know?
Yeah. No, back then, I mean, like I said, I didn't even know what I was doing. I've led kind of a weird life because I never really made inroads to speak of in wrestling, but I did that for a little bit. I was a backyarder.
Dude,
Uh,
so was I. So we have a lot in common in a sense because between
yeah.
horror, dude, I was a backyarder for years as well. I did some
Yeah.
indies work for like almost 2 years.
Okay, you went a little further than me. I was
Mhm.
at indie shows doing the, helping set up rings and
Okay,
everything.
so you're like, yeah, like the guys that
So
were like the new recruits kind of thing, getting the feet wet.
I
Yeah.
went to some training seminars, but I wouldn't say I was ever properly trained. But I mean, I went to like Head Shrinker Samu did one, Heidenreich of all people did one. I've
Nice.
taken offense from Heidenreich. I mean, that's pretty cool. Um, didn't get him to take the Michael Cole photo though. I think everybody was like, "Man, would it be weird to ask him?"
Right, right.
I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Put me against the
Uh,
wall and see what you
yeah, yeah. So I did that. Oh man, and some of that too. Like, I wish I could find some of the footage because I never took it, and I'm not really in contact. Nobody became big that I was doing that with, although I know some people were working indies at one point. But I did like a Night at the Roxbury gimmick at one point with my tag partner. So we would like dry hump the referee and do all sorts of stupid stuff. Primetime DJ Shine was my backyard.
That's
So,
sick, dude. I love it.
yes.
And
So
that's just the time that we were in, the era that we were in. It was backyard was a big thing. I was getting all the
yeah.
VHS tapes, like, the Don't Try This at Home backyard wrestling
Oh
ones.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
my
era
name
of
was
that and bum fights.
yeah, those are the two big ones.
Yeah.
Um, Jamie Starr was my name. I was a heel.
Okay.
And I did the whole headband gimmick then too. It was all part of it, it's been around.
Oh
And
wow.
I just found this the other day and I knew I had it over here. But like working for a couple different indie groups around my area for a little bit. John Cena's dad is heavily involved around this area when it comes
Yeah,
to
he is.
wrestling.
Yeah.
So I found this. I don't remember where I found this in like a jacket pocket or something. And it's a $1 million, but it's Cena's father on it because he was called what was his name?
Was it Johnny
Johnny
Fabulous?
Fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was like he used to come out with these fabulous bucks. And I found this in like
Yeah.
a coat pocket the other day, and I brought it down here, so it kind of gave me a reason to show it. But yeah, so he was there,
Yeah.
and the only like Sasha Banks was around, but
Yeah.
like I don't know if I was ever in the same building as her, but she was in the scene.
Yeah. She was
Um,
an undergrad, kind of a gem, really. Like nobody was talking about her, but if you
no,
saw her locally, it was like this girl's a star.
they were more interested in the other. There was another one around here that they thought was going to be Tila Hendricks. Maybe was that
Taylor Hendricks. Yeah, she
sh-
got signed by Impact at
she
one
was
time.
the one that everybody was like, she's going to make it. And then
Yeah,
for
yeah.
whatever reason, Sasha Mercedes at the time ended up
Mm.
being the one that they signed, and everybody was like, "Wow!" Like we knew she was good, but we thought the other one was the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
The indie scene was, I mean, that's something that's changed a lot too. And YouTube's kind of changed that. I mean, I'm not the biggest AEW fan in the world, but you
neither
look
am
at
I. So
some of these guys that kind of became stars through YouTube. I mean, Danhausen and Orange Cassidy, you can do something like that and actually get signed by a major company. It's it's wild. It was totally different back then. There were guys still working that that went back forever. I mean, Gypsy Joe. I mean, everybody knows that New Jack clip where he beat the crap out of him, but that's a guy from a completely different era. This guy goes back decades, and he was working indie shows. I was at shows with Jimmy Valiant, and it's crazy. Nobody really retires in wrestling, so it's wild. And I did that for a while, never ironically, because he just passed, but always in the back of my head I was like, man, one mistake, and I always had draws in my head. Like, and I don't know how I would handle it, especially if I hurt somebody else. I get cut up all the time back then, but like in my head I was like, man, I don't think I could handle it if I just dropped somebody on their head and then they got paralyzed or worse.
yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah,
It is
never.
strange because even when we were doing backyard back then, like we weren't properly trained, but I for some reason I felt so comfortable, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's because being such a big fan my whole life, I was wrestling in my basement with the neighbors and my brother and having organizations that we created like in my basement
Yeah.
as kids, right? Then that kind of turned into a trampoline one that we did during high school, and then that turned into more of like a backyard league where we built a ring in someone's woods. We
Oh
used to do
yeah,
shows
I
there
remember
and
that.
stuff, and like then I used to train some of the other, like the new people that started, like me and this other kid would train them. They knew nothing, and we were like training them, and we knew nothing really. But for some reason, I don't know why we felt like we knew what we were talking about. Then I went to wrestling school
Mhm.
and learned that. And the only person that I really would say that I'm close with that made it would be Vinny uh,
Massaro?
Marcelia.
Okay. Okay.
So he's in AEW now, or Ring of
Yeah, yeah.
Honor, or whatever it is that you want to say. So he's someone I still talk to on a regular basis, and I mean it's just crazy he has a great story, and he was on my channel once. We did a Lost Boys show together, and
Mhm.
he has a great story, man, and it's wild to hear his story because we worked together during that time, and he was really he basically had a Randy Orton gimmick. He looked like him. He had all the same tattoos as him.
Yeah, yeah.
And the promoter was like, "You do any Randy Orton moves out there, you're out." Like he used to get pissed. And like Vinny was good, and it was just
Yeah.
it was like a carbon copy. And then he kind of came in. Then all of a sudden he started evolving a little bit, and then he ended up quitting. He ended up quitting and getting a regular job and having a family. And me and him stayed in contact because we were both horror fans. Like that's what connected us in the back.
It
So we both loved horror, and he was running a gym, I was running a gym. We were trading
yeah.
horror stuff, and he was making Lost Boys jackets and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden he would, he came by one day and he's like, "I'm done, man. I'm done with wrestling. I'm not doing it anymore."
It was tough back then because I mean he kind of comes from that era where I mean there was still the idea of you had to have the look, which a
That's
lot
right.
of people forget that wasn't really a thing, before Vince McMahon,
Right.
and the big expansion after '84. I mean, you go back to wrestlers back in the day, you get a lot of dudes that were just kind of chubby,
Oh yeah,
hairy,
of course.
and
I
they were
wish there was
great.
more of that, to be honest now. Like the
Well, it doesn't
earthquakes and the
exist.
other stuff, like I miss
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah, the look doesn't exist as much now. They still hold on to it to a degree with WWE. Um, I mean, I know they were talking Danhausen in the chat. Like
Mhm.
he wouldn't have been a thing. Like when I was doing it, and I remember Tracy Smothers, another guy that unfortunately passed a while ago, but he was always super nice because and encouraging because like back then I was always told like my problem was you're not a flippy guy and you're big, you can throw those guys around, but you're not a monster. Like I'm 5'11, I was big. I mean, I could throw those guys around, but I wasn't a monster. And I'll never forget one time I was told they referenced these two. They're like, that Kevin Steen kid and Brian Danielson. He's like, you see those guys? They're good, but they're never going to go anywhere.
Right.
Those
You're
were the
right.
two that they
Mhm.
referenced who went on to be world champions on top of the world. And they just, yeah, it was sort of that thing. Like I was like, well, do I risk all this stuff if I'm
Mhm.
never going to get a look because I'm not unusually tall or jacked?
Mhm.
Uh, so it was a tough time. There were a lot of really talented people that never really got a look. Mike Modest was one back in the
Mhm.
day who a lot of people
Mhm.
know from Beyond the Mat. People who now definitely would have been undeniable. They would have gotten a spot somewhere. So I think it's cool that if nothing else, AEW is another place to work.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it nice because you at least have other options where there was a point in time when you didn't. After WCW, it was like it was very hard to get involved because there was only really one big player in town. And I don't remember, going back to Vinny, what happened. Like, I think it might have been the idea of like AEW and all that other junk because he was done, man. He was out. He was working full time. He had a family. He was done with wrestling. And then all of a sudden something happened where he started to kind of hate it. He didn't watch it.
Mhm.
He was just done. Like he was over it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what it was that brought him back. And it'd be really a cool story to talk to him about. But
Yeah.
he ended up finding the horror gimmick. He did the horror king and he would do some horror stuff. And somehow he got linked in a Ring of Honor. I do not know how. And then he kind of just went with it from there. And now he's in Ring of Honor AEW. And I mean,
Yeah. Doing the
there's
man
a lot of,
thing kind of thing. Yeah.
he was, I don't want to say anything, but that he almost was, if you look it up, there was a point in time where we thought he was going to go to WWE recently, and
Yeah. I
some things
remember.
happened,
Yeah.
and it didn't, and it fell through. But it's just crazy to
Yeah.
see that same kid. Not that he quit like halfway. His career was like he was like 5 or 6 years into his career, quit.
Mm.
Then for whatever reason, just said I'll go back, and then made it more than he ever thought he would ever made it.
Yeah. He
It
was
is
in
a
XPW too for a little bit. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you
Ironically.
about XPW because I didn't realize it was back. I
Yeah.
had no idea. No idea. I mean, I remember when it was basically when ECW folded, it was like the next thing, man. It was the one that, that everybody started to go to and you started to watch because your ECW was gone and XPW was kind of like the closest thing. And you could
Yeah.
find DVDs at FYE cheap, and just stock up on them. So,
Yeah, no, they've been back and going strong with Rob Black. Um, there've been clips recently. I'm sure you saw Masada getting lit on fire, which I took that video
no,
like that.
I don't think I did
Uh,
see that.
yeah,
So
if you
who's there? Who's like their stars now? I mean, again, I don't
uh,
watch enough wrestling now, so I don't know a lot of young guys, right? Is there any
yeah,
like anybody that's like come back into the fold that's like hasn't been around in a while?
I'm sure you've heard of Necro Butcher. He's
Oh yeah.
there.
I didn't even know he
Uh,
was alive still, to be honest with you.
he had cancer and he was very close to not making it. But yeah, he's back crazy as ever. Masada is a big one at indie wise. They've got the body. He also kind of went viral. Again, I don't know if you saw it, but he got his pants torn off and he took a needle through the nether regions. So
So
that's
you're saying
him.
they're still doing hardcore then, obviously.
They do stuff that you could never get away with. I mean, they're still doing Miss Extreme, which a lot of definitely Not going to see that in AEW. They still do a lot of the death match stuff as well. Drake Younger, he had to just retire. He's there. Schlack, which if you've never seen Schlack, just imagine like Ultimate Warrior if he was like a death match guy, a lot scarier. Wow. This dude is like insane.
So are people excited about XPW being back?
Well, Rob Black certainly has his detractors. They're still around. GCW, which is like the bigger.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Is I know them, and that's like the big one. I mean, is that kind of who they're competing with in that realm of that?
I mean, you compete with everybody. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy with GCW because Alex Colon left, and there's been a lot of heat on Brett Lauderdale, the owner of GCW. If you listen to Rob Black's the Rob Black Show on Spotify, it's amazing the amount of like drama and heat that there is in wrestling and backstabbing, even in the indies. It's pretty wild stuff. Yeah, somebody leaked a rap video that Brett Lauderdale did called Desert Eagle. If you want to laugh, you can look that up. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I don't know. XPW just feels like, I know not everybody's into deathmatch wrestling, but it feels a little more like there's an emotional connection. You believe the stars. I mean, like I said, Schlack is not somebody you'd want to meet in a dark alley. He's a scary looking dude. And of course, Necro Butcher. And there's a lot of variety there. I really like what they're doing. And their last show at the Derby Room did quite well. There's a lot of buzz right now.
Wrestling's an interesting one too, because I obviously being a huge fan my whole life, I feel like I'm not really into this. Like actually right now is probably the least I'm into wrestling, in my whole life.
It's a lot to follow now.
And that's the thing. Like I'll listen to podcasts here and there just to kind of get an idea of like what's going on. I'll watch pay-per-views now and then, WWE. I don't really follow AEW that much. Like I know what's going on because I see it scroll through my Instagram or whatever, but I don't follow it too much. It never really grabbed me for whatever reason. But a person that I do follow because I find him super intriguing. I just like people that can make a name for themselves even when they didn't have the rockets strapped to them. The people that kind of made it work even though it wasn't supposed to work. And something that I have to
organic.
Yeah, that's always been Matt Cardona to me is like,
yeah, man,
it's insane to see what this dude has been able to do. Not only when he was in WWE and the Zack Ryder thing on YouTube, and he got over, like I can remember still being at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, and CM Punk's in the main event versus Cena or something, and the whole place is chanting Zack Ryder. We want Ryder, and it's like, yo, this guy is over. Like, how? And then they squashed that, didn't let it. They just kind of gave him a little push, didn't really do anything with him.
And then he got fired again.
He's so over right now. The guy has his own toy company. He's got a podcast. I mean, this guy says he's making more money now than he ever made in WWE. And he's at a point in his career where he's basically like, I'm not signing with anybody. I'm going to work everywhere. And that's it. And if WWE wants me back, it needs to be, there's going to be specific things that I want. Like he wants to come back as like where Cody is or somewhere in that. Like he's not going to go back and be a mid-carder again. He's not going to go back and be
he shouldn't.
And he's like, I'll go back because his wife's there now.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'll go back, but there has to be like, there's no more Zack Ryder. It's got to be my name. I got a valet now. She needs to come. Like the money, like he's got all these things that he's sticking to, which I think is just incredible to see how much this guy has done after being fired, where a lot of people bury themselves in a hole and don't know how to get out of it once they're let go. And it's really amazing to see how this dude is. He's doing death matches now. Who would have in a million years thought he would have gone down that route? Like he's in GCW, right?
Yeah, like a lot wouldn't do that. I mean, because it'd just be, I was a superstar. I'm not going to do this, but look where it got him. I mean, he still has incredible buzz. I would like to see him in XPW Big T. That would be interesting. Nowadays, though, that attitude that it's the end all be all, you have to make it to WWE, which is how I felt. you know,
Mhm.
I felt, you know, because this is after WCW and ECW closed, and you know, you had TNA, of course, but you know, it was WWE. Like you had to get to
Mhm.
WWE. Now people don't have that attitude. I know indie guys, of course, Kruger on our show is an active wrestler right now, and um, it's not that same attitude that's the only measure of success is getting to
Mhm.
WWE. There's guys that will work their whole career on the indies and be huge. Brian Cage, I mean, he's in
Mhm.
AEW now, but that dude was around forever before any company really signed him.
Right.
And, you know, he still carved his path. So,
I think there's a lot of there's a lot of organizations now for indie people to be working, and I just feel like it seems like I said, as much as I'm not involved or I'm not even watching, it seems like it's a pretty hot time for pro wrestling right now. And to see what he's been doing in Matt Cardona, I just think that he's just got such a good mind for business and such a good mind for marketing and branding of himself. It's insane. And it's like I kind of use some of like what he does like in my own stuff with the channel and stuff. Like every little thing could become something, right? Like you look at now,
yeah,
he's like, I'm the indie god. So what does he do? He dresses up like Indiana Jones and it's like a gimmick, right? Like
yeah,
the deathmatch king, he's got the Randy Savage like I just feel like he just knows
how
how
to
to make
tap
it work.
into,
Yeah, like
yeah,
and he took the whole stance in GCW where he's like the anti deathmatch guy, but he's doing all the deathmatch stuff, but hates it, right? And man, I think that you could probably see him in GCW because he's everywhere. But the only difference is, again, I don't know what if that sours his relationship with that dude. I don't like, you know what I mean? Like if he jumps to another company, even though he's a free agent, right? You don't know if that's gonna sour grapes on anybody. But it would be cool to see him get to another thing because I think he's helping everybody right now. You know?
yeah. No, you can reinvent yourself. Sometimes it's just taking that risk. Because I know when he first jumped to the indies, and it's like, what are you doing? Death matches aren't going to get you back in WWE. And I think he's like,
Mhm.
I'm not trying to get back in
Right.
WWE. You know, people love death matches, and he tapped into that, the whole anger that this stereotypical WWE guy is
Mhm.
coming into our world, and they gets the title. It's probably the last truly great thing I think that GCW really did. There's more competition now. You know, there's more competition really every day. Uh, so, but that run that he initially did, I mean, getting the belt off Nick Gage, I mean, my God, people wanted to kill the guy.
Oh, like, did you see that footage of like he was getting shit thrown at him like from every direction? I mean, that's like a
Yeah,
highlight reel that could live on forever. Like it was wild to think about that. And
yeah,
I just, you watch his Instagram and he posts like little different clips that him and that girl are doing, and I'm like, dude, I was like, everything he does is like gold. Like it's just he knows his gimmick and he just sticks with it, and it's like he just lives it, and I think it just works in all directions. And having that new chick now that he's with, like
mhm.
it's killing. They're killing it, and they're like this package now. It's cool to see, and I'm curious to kind of see where he ends up in the long run. But it's good to see that wrestling is healthy again, and people can still make livings off of it and whatnot. And I'm
Yeah,
definitely interested in checking out XPW now that I know it's back.
yeah. Streamxpw.com, and they have a well, not weekly, but they have a TV show, can kind of catch you up on stuff. Todd actually does the DVDs and Blu-rays for them, and if you are at a show, Flesh Wound has a table at all the California
No
shows. So
way, really? That's awesome,
yeah,
man.
yeah, so you can see us there as well. It's pretty wild. Like I said, XPW kind of, there's stuff that goes on. There was a girl randomly stripping in the crowd. Stuff that you're not going to see at a WWE or AEW taping. Two guys were just like they were taking shots and hitting each other with chairs in the crowd to the point that the chairs were just shattered. It's pretty wild stuff.
It's like people missed it, missed this kind of stuff,
Yeah, it's
They're all
like a rock.
excited now.
It's a rock concert in a
It
lot of
is.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, the ring. It is Steph Delander. Yeah, she's again for someone
Yeah.
who's not following wrestling. Like she's like I'm following her, and I'm just like, dude, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
And I see Cable Channel 11. What's going on, man? Big T, what's going on? Um, But yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to be on here all night. We've been here about an hour and a half. I think the conversation's gone in multiple directions, but
Yeah.
it's been great. And the one big thing I don't think we really touched upon was you did mention that you guys had popped into the scene on YouTube, maybe like late 2019, maybe or so. I guess you decided to
Yeah.
maybe take the
2020,
channel,
something like that.
okay,
Yeah.
to the audio to the video. Now, going from all the different reincarnations of where you are now with like Creepshow Radio, and then you change names, like, did you notice the following stick, or was there ups and downs with all the changes that you had made? And then when it became the YouTube thing, as much as you said not everybody poured it over, have you found it to be harder than the audio format when it came to just
Um,
like consistent viewership and content and whatnot?
I've grown to enjoy it more. The viewers don't like automatically import though. I mean, that is like, and it's weird sometimes. Like you'll have people that like Dead Pit. I would expect to have 200,000 subs like right now,
Mhm.
and now they did
Mhm.
go away for 5 years. So
But I mean,
that's
they're not even at 10 yet. So think about how,
yeah, and I mean they should be much higher, but sometimes I don't know, people they're not necessarily following you on Twitter. They're not, they just assume you kind of went away. Even in the last month, I've had a couple people like, "Oh, I thought you guys stopped doing shows." And I was like, "No, never. We never stopped since 2009 ish. We've always been going. I don't think we should have changed the name. That was like one big fight back in the day. I was like, I don't know. People know this. You change the name, then they can't find you. They get confused.
now
But
which name was that you didn't, that you,
we were, well, horror theater radio was the first one. Like there was actually a ton of people listening at that point. But I mean, that's going back. I mean, even Dead Pit was only around a few
Mhm.
years or 4 years, something. So that was still like kind of like the Wild West. There wasn't a fraction of the amount of podcasts as there are now. But then when we changed it to Creepshow Radio, which I agree was a cooler name, but there was a little bit of a drop. Then you had to get it back. Then we were Horror Society Presents Creepshow Radio, and then it's like, well, Todd had Flesh Wound videos, so let's rebrand his Flesh Wound Features, and I like it. I think this will be the last name change, though.
Mhm. Mhm.
Takes a while to get it back, but yeah.
Now, are you guys still pumping it on both formats, or are you just sticking to the video now?
I think we're technically still on Blog Talk, and there's some where I guess you can listen to the audio only version,
Mhm.
but it has to be weird now because like the physical media updates, like kind of got to
Yeah.
see video for it.
It's
So
it is tougher because, I went the opposite direction, right? So I did the YouTube first, and then
yeah.
we did the Rad Pack thing, and then we were doing videos, and I said, well, and
Mm.
then Mel had done podcasts in the past, so she was like, well, why don't we make this audio too? And I know how to do all that stuff. And I was like, cool, like take it, whatever
Mhm.
you want to go on there, just start, putting them on the audio as well. So we kind of went backwards. I think the hardest part is when you have an audio format. And I know a lot of people that will say, hey, I only listen to you on audio because it's just more convenient for me or whatever. And
Mm.
great. Like I actually think we're doing better on audio than we are on the Rad Pack YouTube channel. I think our audio podcast is actually doing better than our YouTube channel itself.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing is when we port over old shows or whatever to get them on the podcast just to keep things rolling, is when you're interacting with the chat, it comes off weird, right? Like
Yeah.
on the audio. So sometimes we'll do like standalone, like audio only, where we'll do like, it'll just be us recording and we won't have a chat. It won't be live or anything like that, because that's where it gets wonky, is when you're listening to it live and you're interacting with random people and they're probably, what's going on here? That's where I think it's kind of hard. So that's why I wasn't sure if you were importing your shows over and whatnot.
We're on like everything just about, and I don't even pay. I mean, I don't know if we're still on Spreaker, but I mean, yeah, we're on a whole bunch of different formats. I almost kind of wonder sometimes. I'm like, should we just be on one? But there's still people that even listen on. I think we're still on Blog Talk. So there are still people that listen. I figured, okay, well they'll all stop listening there because YouTube's the big one.
Mhm.
why
Mhm.
wouldn't you want to see the video? But people listen in their car. I don't know if he's in the chat, but Mikey's a trucker. He's one of our listeners. Like you know, he can't watch the video as easily while he's driving. So,
Mhm.
uh, no, it's interesting. But I've been in it since 2009. I'm around for the long haul. I enjoy streaming with different people and just enjoying. I listen to a lot of you guys out there on YouTube, including some of you in the chat. Like I may not always comment, but I'm around and I love the community. And like I said, everybody's kind of connected in weird ways, even if you don't know each other directly.
Yeah, that's awesome, man, that you're able to do that. Now, is that just because of what you're doing on a daily basis that you have the opportunity to listen? Because that's the
Hmm.
one thing that I feel guilty about is I don't have a lot of time to listen. So like, and doing my own stuff with the podcast and my own videos and trying to get stuff out, like it's even less time, right? So like my job, I cannot at any point be listening or watching. So working 10 to 15-hour days, my only time to like listen
Yeah.
to anybody's stuff is like on my ride to and from. And then all of a sudden I get home and it's like I gotta eat dinner, get ready for the next
Yeah.
day. And hey, maybe I have a stream tonight. And that's where I feel the most guilty is sometimes I'll comment on a video that someone posted and I'm like, oh, I'm finally getting to it 3 weeks later, and
Mm.
liking it. That's where I find hard is that I live in this world where like me being able to watch stuff now that I have my own channel is even like harder
Yeah, I
to do.
work from home, so it's well, for the most part anyways. So it's easier.
Mhm.
I always have people on in the background. I listen to everybody on my TV.
That's cool.
Uh so yeah, yeah. While I'm working, I burn through a lot of different podcasts.
That's great. I mean, it's cool to be able to do that because again, I wish I could be a little bit more involved. Like I feel like the more I end up doing from my end, the less I end up doing from the community aspect, which, I
Mm,
try to keep people involved. I try to do this and that. And that's why I like going live because at least I can interact with people or the content creators and stuff because yeah, with the schedule, it's tough. And it's fun for me to do all this stuff. But it's also, it's an added thing now. It's in my schedules every week. I look and I say, okay, what streams do I have this week? And it's like in my calendar with all my work stuff.
yeah, yeah. No, there's different ways to support people. I'll see some great channels that have like 40 or 50 subs and they're struggling, but they're great. I know
Hmm.
they'll be huge probably in a few years. And I try and at least retweet and always hit that thumbs up for people. I'm always of the mindset that when people are doing well, like we all kind of do well in a way because it's all one
Of
big
course,
community.
exactly.
So
Like, I mean,
yeah.
it really is, and collaborating is huge because you may have eyeballs that watch me that don't watch you, and vice versa. And
Oh yeah.
again, because we all collaborate so much, and because the community in that we're in is so small, one person gets someone from the outside, and then they'll find everybody. Like if you look at
Yeah.
like on your channel, it might say people also listen to, and it's like all the same people that are like part of the community. And
Yeah.
so that's what's cool about, and that's why I love doing collabs and whatnot, is just because, again, to show people that we all are fans of each other, and whatnot. So, no, I think that's cool. And I'm just curious because, again, you've been doing this for so long. Did you ever feel burnout? Like Dead Pit did. Dead Pit had the burnout. You seems like you said you've been nonstop through
No,
this.
I love it because I've always struggled to like meet people, and part of that was moving around a lot, but meet like local fans that are into it like I am.
Mm,
And I feel like almost in a way, even more so than Blog Talk and whatever other stuff we were on in the past, like YouTube's pretty unique. Like I know Basement Blues was in the chat earlier, and like that's probably the only person I've ever known that might be close to what I am as far as physical media. I used to be the weirdo, like, why do you have all these movies? And I'm like,
right,
well, now, I mean, I know a few people that probably have just as much.
right. Mhm.
So yeah, you find your community, and I think YouTube's really special that way. Just during the pandemic, I mean, like I said, Jess, Jay, Jake, a lot of the guys in the chat right now, we became really close during COVID because we're all at home, terrified, a lot of weird stuff. I was That was a weird time for me. I had a breakup. I got, hit by a car. A lot of crazy shit was going on in my life at that time. So, YouTube, there's family out there. Mikey in the chat now, there he is. You get to know people. It's really about the friendships you make more than the subs or the listens that you get. I mean, that's the most important thing. And yeah, I've met so many great people through YouTube. It's amazing, really. So I know people out there will get burnt out sometimes, but you'd be surprised. I mean, like I said earlier, that guy that just randomly messaged us, only talked to him twice, but he had that tragedy in his family, and somehow our random bullshit helped get him through it. So you never know the impact that you have on people. And I know Dead Bits had a huge impact on tons of people in the chat right now.
And you're right. It does change things when you hear things like that, right? Because you're just doing something fun. You don't realize how it's helping others that are on the outside. And I think you're right though when it comes to a lot of things. Like I'm not feeling burnout at all. Like I mean, I love this stuff. Like it's like my fun now, right? Like I have a group of friends, but everybody's got shit going on. I don't see them a lot. But what's nice about this is, when you hang out with your friends, it's like, okay, what time do you want to meet? Okay, what time do you have to get out of here? It's getting late. Where here it's like you just come down here and you guys just roll. Like you don't have to set anything up per se or like leave your house. Like you can do this and go right to bed, right? Like it's easy. Yeah. And to find like-minded people where you feel like you're different compared to a lot of people in just a way of like what your interests are. Like my interests are very different than anybody that I'm connected with on a regular basis, like in person. So
hard to meet people in real life now. The video store is long dead.
Sure, yeah. Coming on here and finding people that are very similar to you is just it's easy. Like for instance, I've known you for a while. Yeah, we've chatted small talk on Facebook and on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it may be. We've been on shows with Piz together and in groups. Like we've known each other, but this is the first time you and I ever had a one-on-one conversation. And I feel like it is easy. It's not awkward. It's easy. So why is that? Why can two people get together that never talked to each other one-on-one before and it just like flow? It's because of similarities, right? Like,
yeah, it's just one place everybody can go. I can, tune into Dead Pit, and I always love it. Like 1 second to go, the sales live. It's like, oh, this is all bullshit.
And they wonder why they don't get sent screeners from companies anymore.
You know what? I think a lot just don't do it anymore. I know some big YouTubers that don't get things that blow my mind. I remember Vinegar Syndrome on Facebook when they first became a thing. I don't know if you remember their first release.
Was it my first release from those Massage Parlor Murders, I think.
It was that and the H.G. Lewis Missing Films set.
Okay.
And they made a post that I saw, of course, they weren't a thing. In fact, it's funny. I can remember in some of the like Code Red groups on Facebook back in the day, which was the place to go for drama.
Of course.
They would make fun of them. It's like, oh, yeah, that porn company. And I remember responding to their first post just on Facebook. It's like, we're interested in sending screeners out. I think I might have been the first one that commented. And up until, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, I got every single Vinegar Syndrome release sent to me as a screener, but a lot of stop. Wild Eye's a good one, though. They do still send stuff.
Let me ask you this. So you're saying Vinegar Syndrome no longer does, correct?
Well, I can't say that. I mean, I'm sure.
Okay, well, you're saying that you're not getting them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine like a Spooky Astronauts probably does. But no, yeah, they kind of stopped. But I heard that it stopped for others too, so unfortunately.
Well, it's funny because I was talking about this with somebody today because Screen Factory is still sending screeners out now. Did you ever get anything from them?
Back then, I know Chris, I believe, did. Okay. I heard that they kind of really limited that too. But like I said, I'm just one guy. I'm sure there's some of you out there that still get stuff, but a lot don't because, and I was told this, I mean, I won't say by who, but I was told like people make videos about it anyways, which is true. like, Vinegar Syndrome sale now. There's so many streams.
Sure.
I think they just were like, we don't really need to.
Correct. I mean, that makes sense, right? Is that they're getting free publicity instead of having to send it out, right? Anyways. So that definitely makes sense. But it was funny because with Scream Factory, obviously Dead Pit used to get them after the whole shit in a box thing that ended. So they kind of, they ended that relationship with that whole thing. Like that got, because they were so big at the time, that got to like, they had like a meeting about this. Like, should we open these boxes or not? Like it like legit was like a round table, like this, like everybody meet in the boardroom type of thing, right? And
that's a legendary YouTube
so that squashed all that. But I still know people that get screeners from Screen Factory that haven't had a blog in like 10 years. And they're still getting stuff in because they'll sometimes will send them to me and be like, hey man, like, or I don't really collect anymore, but they're still, and it's just wild because it's like they're not, it doesn't seem like they're sending them to anybody that's current, but like some of these, it's almost like they have the same screener list from like ever ago that they'll sometimes just like toss out there. And these people are like, dude, I haven't had a site going in like 10 years.
Sometimes you're just on a list and you get the stuff, which is wild. I'm sure like Wet Movie obviously would.
Right.
But
he does.
Sometimes you're just grandfathered in. And maybe that's why, because I mean, like I said, I have just about everything that Vinegar Syndrome ever put out, and I don't buy everything anymore. But that was because they were sending screeners, so that's why some have slips, some don't. Like they didn't send them with the slips usually, but
their first whole run, there was no slips for a while. Remember, like
that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I'm the weirdo that like slips, at least when it was the same art, it was never really like a big thing for me. I never really thought of it. Sometimes honestly, if they all have slips, it takes up more shelf space. So if I go back to the DVD days, I discard some of them, at least unless it was something cool on there that wasn't on.
I think, and I don't know if it's just the mentality that we have because we've been collecting a long time, but I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, they never meant much to me. I do love the Vinegar Syndrome slipcovers now. I'm not a slipcover fanatic. I actually don't really care for them unless it's someone that like puts a lot of effort into it. Like, a standard one, I don't need it. A lot of the times, like if I buy, I don't know, trying to think of like a mainstream movie that I bought recently, I'll discard it into a box because in my head I'm thinking, well, every 50 I might be able to get another movie on this shelf. Like and then everything looks flush, right? So like the whole thing looks flush. I don't have like some stick. So I usually will do that. But for most things, like boutique wise, I'll probably keep them on. But I'm not a crazy hunter for them or whatever. Yeah,
it's like money in the bank at this point. And some stuff. I mean, look, some stuff looks really cool. I mean, Beastmaster.
Oh yeah,
that initial box. I was like, of course I'm buying this. It's. Did you get anything from Subscriber Week?
Yeah. What did I get? I got I don't even remember now. It was like one of those things where like those are the $14 titles. I would have to actually go to my shelf and be like, do I own this? Because sometimes everything kind of bleeds together. I don't remember offhand. The only one I remember that I definitely grabbed was that Television Terrors box set or whatever.
Oh yeah. That's a good set.
I didn't have it, so I definitely grabbed that one, and that's the only one I think I can remember offhand. But I did grab a couple for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Severance sale too, but to get an idea of just how insane I am, I mean, like there's like almost a full page of just shit. That's
what you bought on the Vinegar Syndrome thing?
Vinegar Syndrome and Severin. I mean, that's Severin.
Holy crap!
Yeah, like I do have an issue. Next year, next year I probably need to just be a subscriber. Todd did the subscription thing, and every month he's just like, you would be saving money if you would just do it. And I'm like, yes, but still it's hard, like $1,000.
But I mean, how you had to have that's $1,000 right there. No, has to be.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, it probably is pretty close.
Well, did you get bundles from Severin and stuff?
No. I mean, some of that is actually, I don't buy everything on street like I used to. I used to. It used to be, and I'm sure a lot of you guys in the
Day ones.
chat, Tuesday was release day, and I would just get everything on release day. I have stopped that. I will wait on certain things to be on sale because I'm just like, more and more I'll see like something that I didn't open and then I'm seeing it on sale. I'm like, well, you could have had it for half the price. Um, and I watch my stuff. I'm not like just somebody that does it for trading card purposes
Right,
like a lot of people. But yeah, I'm like, no, I don't need to get it right away. I'll watch if something dips below like 1,000. And I mean, you know how that goes with Vinegar Syndrome.
Of course, yeah.
I'll check every couple days, try and keep tabs, make sure nothing's going out of print. And then if I have to get it, I'll get it. Paying for is the worst creation in the history of man.
It is, but yeah, like it makes you feel good, but then all of a sudden you have like 25 of them going and you're like getting dinged like every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you can like turn off the automatic payments for a few days to get you to the next paycheck. But yeah, no, it's like the worst thing. I was like, how many of these do I have going? And I was like, oh, 13. That's not good.
Exactly. It is crazy. Now, so you didn't get the Spinel plushie?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I had to get it too.
I knew that was going to sell out, and I was like, well, if I have buyer's remorse, I can just sell it, although I know I'm not going to. So, yeah, I don't always get the gimmick stuff. Like, I didn't get the Anthropophagus one they did. But, Joe Spinell, how do I not?
I had to get it because it's either going to look like complete shit when we get it. It's going to be like it's going to look like Ron Jeremy or whatever. But like, it's, I'm curious. And I think that at the end of the day, no matter what, it's sold out now. At the end of the day, having a Joe Spinell plush is always going to be valuable to somebody. So like,
yeah,
I think it was a decent investment, to be quite honest.
I think they need a gimmick where you hug it or squeeze it and it just sweats. That was my pitch. I know it'd be more expensive, but
right. But I think that was a pretty cool little thing. So it was just so out of nowhere, like, a person plushie doll of a I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. And but yeah, I didn't grab too much. I grabbed the bundle for that. I grabbed like that extraterrestrial visitors or whatever. I didn't own it. I never seen it, but it looked up my alley, man.
That is up your alley. I don't know if you've watched it yet, but
I haven't watched it,
Oh yeah, you probably will want to do a video on it. That's fun.
Woo!
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
but
do you do do you go to the movie theaters often? Do you do like
nah? Okay. I wish I did more, but I probably only go a couple times a year now. It sucks. I feel bad because I don't want theaters to go under, and I'm not doing a real good job helping that out, But big movies, I'll go check them out. But to me, like, I wouldn't even know what a big movie is anymore. Like I'm not really big into I won't go see Transformers or anything like that. But
I'm burnt out on the Hollywood blockbusters. There's stuff like God is a Bullet. If you like revenge movies, holy crap, that's a movie out of time.
Yeah, I never even heard of it. I'm very kind of out of touch when it comes to what's going on when it comes to that stuff. Like, I mean, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, I can't wait when Maxine comes out. Like, that's the only thing I'm thinking about is like something like that. I'll go see. I'll see like the Screams. I'll see the Halloween. I'll probably go see Exorcist if it hits the theater. I'll probably go see that, just out of, I think, habit of like always seeing those movies, because I feel like even in the 2000s, horror movies in the theater were just special for some reason. Like, he had that midnight show the night before. They don't do that anymore. It's like the night before, it's like, oh, you can see it at night before. It's at 7. I'm like, that's lame. When you're at the midnight, it was always like the hardcores were all there,
Yeah, no, I do AMC A-list, so it's like it's $20, a month. You can see 3 movies a week, so
that's
it's
insane, dude.
Yeah, so I go a lot. The industry's changing so much though now. Like, I think the blockbusters kind of going away. Superhero movies are kind of going the way of westerns, where I think they're not going to just disappear entirely, but kind of that automatic smash hit is gone now. It'll be like westerns. You'll get one once in a while. I think it's going to go back, like, really, like, be kind of an indie thing. I feel like 10 years from now, Hollywood will still make movies, but you're going to see a lot more independent stuff. Like I like the John Wick movies, but I'm not going to lie, I had a lot more fun with God is a Bullet.
Hmm.
You know, it's just a little more raw and kind of felt like something I might have watched in the early 80s or, you know, just it's, I don't know. I think you're going to see more of that, a lot more films breaking through. I know it's been out a week, but Insidious is supposed to take down Indiana Jones, I believe.
Wow. See,
Which
like
is,
I kind
yeah.
of I'm very at fault because I have a tough time even giving things a chance anymore. Like that's my issue. Like that's why I don't see
Yeah.
anything. Like I have no interest in seeing Indiana Jones. I will see Insidious just because I did like the other ones. Maybe not
Mhm.
in the theater, but I'll probably grab it. You know, there's just so many things that I'm just kind of like, I'm good. I don't need. I don't. I've got enough shit to watch. I don't. That's just gonna hit the bottom of the barrel, kind of thing. But it's again, it's my own fault. But like when I went to Panic Fest this year, that was the first time I attended that event, which is like a film event that I've never been to something like that before, where you basically just watching new movies all day in a theater. All these people are bringing their movies to the table. I had a
Mhm.
blast with that, man. There was some good stuff that came out of that weekend, and it was all, you know, I've been meaning to do reviews on some stuff, and I'm like, dude, luckily this isn't even out yet, but you know, I saw what the hell was it now? Bury the Bride, that movie. I thought that was really good. It was a good theater experience. I think it was a
Yeah.
shocker. I didn't really know what to expect. I thought that was good. Luckily, we saw Evil Dead Rise there. Obviously, that was fun. We started a week early. You know, Renfield was there, Sisu was there. I mean, these are recent movies
Sisu's
that
good.
kind of I didn't get to check it out, but I just pre-ordered the Steelbook or whatever. But I will
Oh,
check that one
nice.
out.
Yeah, that's a good
Another
time too.
Another movie we saw that I don't know if you've seen everything, so you've probably seen it. That was unreal that I've been meaning to do a review on because I don't know if this thing's ever going to see the light of day. Abruptio,
I don't think I've seen that yet.
dude,
I don't
it's
think it's available yet, is it?
it's not, and I don't know
Yeah.
what the deal with this thing is because it's a. I don't even know if you can find it online, but I was going to do a review on it. It's something like I've never seen before. They use like these puppets.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
they're like, you know, like the puppets, like if you would have went to like Chuck E. Cheese back in the day, they'd be like that human band, but they were like animatronic humans that are really freaky looking.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's
grew
what
up
this is
with
about. And it's a movie, and those are the characters, and like all the voices are like Sid Haig's a voice. And so I mean, this thing was
okay.
done
Yeah.
like for so long. And if you guys try to see if you can find anything on it, it's absolutely insane. It's like
Yeah.
about
I'll
it.
ask Todd because yeah.
And I don't
Sounds
know
good.
where you can check it. I really don't, but I want to do a review on it just because I thought I was like so behind. I'm like, oh, you know,
Mhm.
I saw it in April. Now it's July. I'm like, I'm way behind in
It,
doing this review, but at the same time, I'm like, but nobody knows what this is. Nobody
you
talks
ha-
about it.
you have to dig for stuff now. I mean, like uh it doesn't reinvent the wheel by any means, but like if you're in for like a slasher stalker flick, Hunter Killer, it had a limited
Mhm.
theatrical.
I never
But
heard of
that
it.
was yeah, a lot of fun. Unfortunately that one only got a DVD release, but yeah, Hunter Killer, Malum, which is like a remake of, not an exact remake, but a remake of Last Shift. That was really good. This has been a weird year. Like really, when I look at it, like a lot of the blockbusters, like I just haven't cared. Pretty much all of my my favorite stuff is either foreign or indie
Mhm.
titles now. Yeah, you really
Now,
have to dig.
did you see Bo is Afraid?
Yeah, yeah, I did. That's
All right,
a
what did you think? I didn't see it, but I've heard such mixed reviews, and I'm afraid to watch it because I've been such like a Ari Aster fan, like up until like like I keep saying like, dude, he's done everything he's done has been gold. And now I'm like afraid to see this because I'm like, oh shit, like, am I
don't
gonna
go
change my tune here?
don't go in expecting a horror movie. I mean, those elements, I guess, are kind of there, but this is it's very arty, and I don't say that in a bad way because I did like it, but it's one of those movies I'm like I'm looking forward to watching the Blu-ray again to because I can't tell you exactly what the hell
Mhm.
that was supposed to be
So that's the thing
about.
I'm afraid of is I'm gonna watch it and be like,
Yeah,
I don't know what that was I just watched. I can't figure out that movie, which I'm sure is
yeah.
exactly what's gonna happen. That's why I've been afraid to kind of give it a
Uh,
chance because I'm like,
like mommy issues and just a lot of really insane shit. I like those kind of movies, but that's not one I'd have to know your tastes a little bit more before I'd say go watch it. But
I'm more or less gonna probably say I won't like it. You mean I did, you know, for some
yeah,
reason I don't know why I loved Midsummer, but I feel like I'm hearing more and more people like bash it now, and I'm like, what? Why is everybody?
that
I
gets
thought it
more
was great.
mixed. Yeah, Hereditary out of that wave where A24 was just like classic, classic, classic. Midsummer, I see more detractors.
Hmm.
People love Hereditary. The Witch, people
Mm.
tend to love that, although not for everybody. I mean, the pacing maybe is not everybody's speed, but yeah, Beau is Afraid is a very different movie. It's never boring because it's a long movie. I mean, it's an assault on the senses. It's kind of a like a I don't know if you ever saw Dr. Caligari, not the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but Dr.
No,
Caligari. It's one of
I don't.
those weird ass movies that I don't do drugs, but I don't think you don't need to. You're
Right.
just gonna feel like you're on something watching it.
That's like that. That's why you gotta watch that Abruptio, man. It's the same thing. You
Yeah, I'm
I'm
gonna
telling
have
you,
to.
it'll be well, so I saw
Yeah.
Big Crack Rock in here says it looks like a creepy version of Team America. I could see that.
Yeah, it's been a
Um,
popular Mad God finally came out from Phil Tippett. Yeah, there's a lot of Unicorn Wars,
See, I don't
which
know any of this stuff.
that one was a shock. Lauren Dixon, who I do
Mhm,
Region Free with,
mhm.
he recommended it to me, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, teddy bears killing each other. I mean, it might be fun, but there was a lot more to that one. If you want like just a twisted, messed up animated movie, Unicorn Wars, there's more to it than you're expecting. I'll put it that
Mm,
way. That was a gem that I saw this year uh, as well. And yeah, it's a strange year. There's a lot theatrically that didn't hit like I was hoping, unfortunately.
mm.
But I'm gonna see Insidious on Monday, and I like those movies, so I think
Yeah.
it's probably time to end it at this
Mhm.
point.
I think so too. I'm surprised that there's a this
Yeah.
I don't remember 4, so I don't remember how it ends. I actually wanna rewatch it because I forget, and then I heard this one kinda goes back into, like, the first one kind of, so
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm curious. I think it's probably time to end it. I mean, I think they progressively are getting worse, so maybe it's probably that time.
They haven't turned into Conjuring yet. Like Conjuring, the first movie's great. Second movie I think is really good, although on multiple watches, not
Dan,
as
I'm losing you. I
much.
can't hear you.
Oh, how am I? Am I back? You hear me?
Is it just
Uh,
me? Can you guys hear Dan?
you hear me out there? I hear Garrett, but he doesn't hear me. That's weird.
Is it me?
I don't know. In the chat, maybe you can say which
People in the
one of
chat,
us
can
is
you
muted.
hear me or can you hear Dan?
Oh, they hear both of us. That's
Unless Corey shut
bizarre.
us down.
No, we're still live.
You can hear Dan? What the? I can't hear him for some reason. Hold on.
Huh. That's strange.
That's so weird. I can't hear him.
Well,
Everybody can hear you though, so
yeah, well,
hold
I
on.
think you were getting ready to sign off, but uh, yeah,
Let's
they
see.
hear both of us, so I that's probably a board issue which I couldn't help
That's
you
so
with.
strange. I can't hear him.
Yeah. Huh. Huh. That's bizarre. Let's see here. I don't know if
I don't
Corey.
know what just happened. Well, maybe let me see. Yeah. So anyhow, I can't hear Dan at all, and I don't know if he can hear me or not. I
I
don't know if the
can.
chat can hear us, but it seems
I
like you
can.
can hear both. But
Yeah.
anyway, guys, it's been 2 hours and it's been a
Yeah.
great conversation with Dan. It really has. And again, I've never talked to him one-on-one before, and this was easy, man. We talked about things like wrestling. We talked about his journey. I mean, this was just so cool to finally get him on here. And like I said, he's an OG. We talked a lot about Dead Pit and their, innovative and, how they get a lot of people involved. Dan was obviously somebody that I listened to, when I was just a collector. And, obviously if it wasn't people like him and Dead Pit, like I probably wouldn't be doing this either, but they were pioneers to me. And I just want to thank him for coming on here, and Corey too, for having me host on his channel. And, it's always a fun time to come in and see different people in the chat that I don't usually see. So if you're not subscribed to me over at Born2BeRad, go check it out. I have a Rad Pack podcast. They're on all audio platforms and YouTube at the Rad Pack. And then obviously you can find Dan over at Flesh Wound Features. And he just brought up, which I was going to talk about before we lost contact, is that also Region Free is back. So very, very cool that Region Free is back. So make sure to kind of follow them. Dan is everywhere like he always is, doing his thing. So guys, everybody in the chat, thank you for checking this out. Everybody on the replay, thank you for checking this out as well. This is Garrett at Born2BeRad, and I don't know if I can end it this way, but like always, stay rad.
I'll go with Belladonna.
Belladonna. We could all literally fit in her ass at this point. Like, I mean, she is.
I might change mine then.